Okay. So I've been doing a teaching with Zoom class for the adult school, I think several times. And what I want to try to do today is just give you a taste of what Zoom can do, what its benefits are. And then if you want to take the class, which will be much more detailed, feel free to do so. This is going to be kind of a 15 to 20 minute, I hope at most, quick and dirty overview, and I can answer any questions you might have. I don't know exactly what Jim is going to do, so some of this stuff may overlap. If it does, I apologize in advance. But I just want to say one thing about Jim. He has got a radio voice. Jim, have you ever been in radio before? You have got an outstanding voice for radio.
No.
Oh, okay, there you go. All right. So, I've been told.
So does that mean we don't like the video? You don't like his looks, but you like his voice?
He's fine. I've been told that I have a face for radio, but Jim definitely's got a voice for radio. I can tell you that. So this is me. This is how you can reach me if you need to. I do computer consulting on the side. That's kind of how I got into this adult school stuff. But if you need to reach me, you can find me here. Or if you're not fast enough to write this down, you can always call the school. They definitely know where to find me. So I just want to talk briefly about Zoom and what it does. We're all on a Zoom call, so we have at least a taste for that. We know it's all about audio and video conferencing. And I know all of our mics right now are muted. So let me just mention a couple things about Zoom that will come into play maybe during this session of our meeting, but also you might find this useful when you're teaching a class yourself. I'm going to demonstrate a lot of this stuff because I'm using a Mac, but it's very similar on a Mac and a PC. It kind of works the same way. There's a feature built into Zoom called Raise Your Hand. And if you are a participant in a meeting, you will be able to get the attention of the hosts through a feature called Raise Your Hand. Like right now, as I'm doing this session, I have a little strip of windows on the right side of my screen. It's got about 5 or 6 people in it, so I can't see everybody. If you're jumping up and down, waving your hands at me, I may not even be able to see that. But there's a feature in Zoom that allows you to raise your hand if you're a participant, and your students can do this as well. At the bottom of the Zoom window, there's a participants button that'll be visible to you. You may need to move the mouse pointer down toward the bottom of the main Zoom window, but a participants button will eventually show up. And clicking that button opens up a panel either attached to your main Zoom window or off to the side if you choose to detach it, called the participants list. Everybody in this call can view the participants list. You can see who's on the call, whose microphone is currently in use, whether or not their camera is on or their mic is on. And at the bottom of that participants window, there will be a button that says raise hand. And if you click that button, a little blue hand will show up next to your name in the participants list. You can take that participants panel and pop it out separate and apart from your main Zoom window if you want to by clicking that little down arrow button in the upper left-hand corner and then choosing pop out from the pop-up menu that appears. A little tip for all of you, whenever I do a Zoom call, I always have the participants list open, particularly when I'm teaching, because I can then see who's here, whose mic is open, who's got their hand raised, right? That's an easy way to see if anybody's got any kind of a question at all. So if anybody wants to click that little raise hand button, you'll see a blue hand show up next to your name in the list. And the host will know that you've got your hand in the air. Ah, Joel, very good. You've got your hand in the air and you have a question that you want to ask. There's also a feature built into Zoom called chat. Again, in a traditional desktop Mac or PC computer, if you move the mouse to the bottom of the Zoom window, you'll see a chat button. You click the chat button and a chat window will open. And at the bottom of the window, you can decide who you want to send a little chat message to by just clicking on that everyone pop-up. You'll see a list of everybody in the meeting. You can send a message to everybody. You can send a message to one person, type your message, press return, and that message will go off to that person. And again, this chat window can be popped out apart from the main Zoom window by using the pop-up menu in the upper left-hand corner. Choose pop out, and the Zoom window will show up on the chat window will show up on the side of your Zoom window. In addition, if you're using an iPhone or an iPad, to participate in one of these meetings. You can also use the raise your hand feature. On the iPad, there's a more button that you'll see in the interface. As with many iPad and iPhone apps, and I'm sure the same is true with Android, I don't use Android devices, but a mobile device like a tablet or a smartphone doesn't have a traditional menu-driven interface like we're used to with computers. So a lot of times extra commands that are kind of obvious on a computer interface are going to be hidden somewhere else. In this case, on the iPhone and the iPad, it's behind this more button that you'll see. Tapping that more button brings up a menu, and here you'll find the raise your hand feature, you'll find the chat feature, you'll find the ability to add a virtual background, disconnect your audio, provide clapping or thumbs up emoji, all behind the more button. There's also a separate chat button on the iPhone and the iPad, and you can get to that using the participants button. Just tap the participants button and a list of participants will appear, and your chat button will be at the bottom of that participants list. Otherwise, the feature works the same way. Decide who you want to send the message to, type your message, tap send, and the message will go out to the people you've designated. So during the course of this little presentation, which shouldn't last too long, if any of you want to raise your hand, you know how to do that. If any of you want to simply unmute your mic and ask, go ahead. If anybody wants to send something in the chat, feel free to do that as well. So I'm just going to talk very, very briefly about Zoom, what it is, what it does, and how you might be able to make use of it. As you probably know, one of the Zoom's big benefits is that it runs pretty much everywhere. It runs on Apple products, it runs on Windows, it runs on Android, it runs in browsers like Chrome and Safari. It really is a pretty solid, yesterday's experience notwithstanding, communications tool that can really run pretty much anywhere. So the major benefits of Zoom when it comes to teaching with Zoom, I mean, we all see the video conferencing piece of it, we all have the audio conferencing piece of it, we can all kind of see each other if we allow our cameras to be used. But one of the key benefits for teaching with Zoom is the screen sharing feature, right, which we're seeing right now. I'm able to build a presentation on my PC or Mac and then open that presentation on my device and share it with all of you. And as I advance the slides, the slide changes, you see exactly what I'd like you to see. Screen sharing, whether you're doing presentations or documents or videos, is actually a real nice feature of Zoom. Secondly, you can record meetings if you want to. We're recording this portion of the meeting now for playback later, but there are features involved that allow you to record meetings for playback later, which is a benefit that you that's kind of nice, that you really don't get live if you're in a classroom. And lastly, one of the major benefits of this is you're really in control. When you decide to run a meeting, you have the ability to decide whether recording occurs. You have the ability to mute microphones if you want to. You have the ability to kick people out if they're being disruptive, and decide who gets in if you need to. So it's really amazing that you can do some of these things even in a remote circumstance. Gerald, I see your hand is in the air. Do you have a question? Go ahead and unmute yourself if you need to first.
Yeah, quick question. With recording the meetings, can the students record the meeting, or is this strictly for the instructor to record the meeting?
It's kind of twofold, and I'm not doing any class recordings right now, but if you want to do this, you as the host have to enable recording on your end, and then you have to permit students to do the same. And when the students do the recording, they record to their own devices. Right now with Zoom, you have to store the recording on either a traditional desktop computer, a Mac or a PC. You can't, for example, record or store a recording of a meeting onto an iPad or a smartphone. It's got to go to a traditional PC. And in addition to that, students, if they want to do a recording, have to have a Zoom account. Normally, you don't necessarily have to have a Zoom account if you're just going to participate in a meeting. If you want to host a meeting, you have to have a Zoom account. If you want to record a meeting, you've got to have a Zoom account. So it's up to you as the host. So for example, you couldn't decide to have a meeting and students could just go out and record that without your permission. You have to grant the permission to the students to be able to record the meeting. But it can work for both the instructor and it can work for the students if you want to set it up that way.
Great, that answered my question. Thank you very much.
Okay, no problem. And as one of the co-hosts here, I can lower your hand right from my screen. There we go. Okay, so you've all probably done this. You've all probably signed up and gotten a Zoom account through the district using your mdusd.org email address. You have to do this in order to host a meeting. So to do that, you just go to zoom.us and enter your work email on the web page, sign up for free, and once you do that, you will get access to what the district has decided you can have as a teacher in the district. Some of the settings are going to be set up by the district for you, and then there are other things you can do to customize your own account as you see fit. But you'll need to host a meeting on Zoom. You got to sign up and get an account. You'll sign up with your mdusd.org email address at zoom.us. In addition, there's software for Zoom on practically every platform, right? Mac, Windows, just go to zoom.us/download, and the website will sense whether you're using a Mac or a PC to connect and offer you the Zoom software to download. In addition, there's versions of Zoom that run on iPhones. There's versions of Zoom that run on Android. You can get those from the respective app stores and install them in the usual fashion. Once you do that, if you launch the Zoom software on your Mac or PC, and that really is probably the best device to use to run a class. You can run a class using an iPad or an iPhone, but the screens are so much smaller. The options are much better on a traditional desktop computer. So download the Zoom software, and when you run it, this is the main Zoom window that you're going to see. Again, this is the Mac version. I'm sure the Windows version is very, very similar. But this is the main interface into your Zoom account, right? Along the top of this window, there are some buttons: home, chat, meetings, contacts, a search field, and this button in the corner that's got my picture on it is actually your account button. There's a way to set up your Zoom account to plug your picture into your account so that it gives you a little bit more customizability, I guess is a word, for your account. In addition, if you decide to turn your camera off, the Zoom account will substitute your picture for the live video behind you. That's what Gerald has got going right now if you're looking at him on the screen. Lacking a picture, will just plug your name in, which is what we're seeing with Joel right now because his camera's turned off. So this is the main home screen for the Zoom interface. From here, you can start a meeting, you can join a meeting, you can schedule a meeting, you can share your screen if you're already involved in a meeting. And you'll also see a list of upcoming meetings for a given day on the right side of this window. Okay. I'm going to just touch on a couple of these buttons and what they do. The next one I want to talk about is this meetings button at the top. If you click the meetings button, this is where you'll see a list on the left-hand side of all of your upcoming meetings, as well as any meetings you've recorded. And selecting any one of these meetings on the left-hand side will show you details about the meeting on the right. In addition to being able to start a meeting from here, you can copy the meeting invitation, which is all visible down below. You can edit the meeting, delete the meeting, whatever you need to do. We're going to talk very, very briefly, I think a little bit later, about creating a meeting. But once you have scheduled a meeting, it becomes part of your account. It's accessible through this meetings button in the main Zoom window. And you can select any of these meetings that may appear on the left-hand side and get details about the meetings on the right-hand side. I mentioned this account button in the upper right-hand corner. This is where you will go to see if you are logged in correctly. You can change your settings from here. You can also check for Zoom updates from here. I want to mention that Zoom updates button in particular because the Zoom folks are constantly updating their software, adding additional features, changing the location of some settings. You know, when the pandemic and the shelter-in-place stuff first hit, a lot of people jumped into Zoom just to keep track on a personal basis with other people. And Zoom had some security issues at the very start of things. And they've since been tightening down a lot of the security holes that were in place in Zoom. They've been issuing frequent updates. So it's a good idea to try to keep your software up to date consistently, because more security features are added, additional features are added. It's just a good idea for both you and your students to keep your Zoom software up to date. And this is where you would go to do that. You'd click this check for updates button, and the software will go out and get new software for you and offer to install it for you. Any questions about this piece so far? The main Zoom window, the home area, and the meetings area. And again, if you take the class from me, we get into much more depth about how all these things work together. But this is just kind of a quick and dirty overview of where to find meeting settings and where to check for updates. Okay. Once you decide you're going to do a class, you want to schedule a meeting with Zoom. You can do it one of two ways. From this main screen, the home area, you can just simply click this schedule button. And what you'll get is a little sheet that will appear in front of your main Zoom window. From here, all you have to do is provide a name of the meeting, maybe the name of your class, plug in the date and time. If this is a class that you're going to be teaching, say, every week on Wednesdays from 1 to 2 p.m., you might just want to check the box to make that a recurring meeting. So there's no need to create a separate Zoom meeting for every session of a class that extends for several weeks. You can make that meeting into a recurring meeting and then let the students use the same link and the same meeting information to join the meeting each time. That's going to lower the stress level for both teachers and students. Trust me on that. Once you set up a meeting, the Zoom software will automatically generate a meeting ID, a unique meeting ID. It will also provide a passcode for you and turn on the waiting room. You probably experienced the waiting room a little bit with this meeting, I hope, where you were maybe in a waiting room and then admitted by the instructor. This meeting ID and security passcode and waiting room setting is all a way for Zoom to tighten down the security around each of your meetings and prevent what's been called Zoom bombing, where people show up in your meeting, disrupt the meeting, take over the meeting. The meeting ID and the passcode in the waiting room are ways to alleviate those problems. Eileen, I see your hand in the air, your blue hand. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I do. If we set up a recurring meeting, I know there's an end, you can establish an end date, but will Zoom send reminders to your students, or you still have to do that reminder?
I think you've got to do that on your own. I don't think it's set up to send reminders out in that way. Zoom originally, really at its core, is an enterprise communications tool for businesses, right? And it's being adapted to work with schools, personal meetings, book clubs, whatever it may be. So there are some features built into Zoom from an enterprise standpoint where enterprise information technology people can add in like directories of people and set up calendars and all kinds of fancy stuff for businesses that want to be using Zoom constantly, right? People are constantly going from meeting to meeting to meeting virtually using Zoom. So recurring meetings are kind of an odd duck in that when you are looking at your main Zoom window in that home area, scheduled meetings will show up on the right-hand side of that window, but recurring meetings will not. So actually, you want to try to use the meetings button in that main Zoom window to see all of your scheduled meetings and all of your recurring meetings in one place. But there's still going to be some manual effort involved of reminding students to join meetings at certain times, unless there's something built into ASAP that I don't know about, and maybe Jim is going to cover that a little bit later. We'll just see. Okay. Okay. To finish off scheduling a meeting, you'll decide whether you want to have video available for both the host or the participants, your choice. You want to be able to tell students how to join with audio, either by telephone, computer audio, or more typically really telephone and computer audio. Give the students a choice, let them join with their computer audio. That's usually the easiest way to handle things. And then you have a calendar choice here as well, where you can choose to let Zoom create a calendar event using whatever calendar program you have running on your device. Once I click this save button, it's going to create a calendar event and offer to put it on my calendar for me with all of the meeting details already built in. That's the basics for scheduling a meeting. You just click that schedule button, fill out the details, click save, and your meeting is now scheduled and ready to go with a meeting ID, a passcode, the waiting room setup, and a link. A unique link is created that you can share with your students. So when they want to join the meeting, all they do is probably what you did today. Click the link, it pulls the meeting ID and the passcode out of that link, connects you to the meeting, and you're good to go. It's really, really, really simple. Any questions about scheduling a meeting? Okay. When it comes time to
So Jim, excuse me.
Yep.
Not a question about the meeting, but I see that you're using a laser pointer on your screen. How do you do that?
Well, once you decide to share your screen, there's going to be a separate toolbar that will appear on your device. And one of the options there is there's a button labeled Spotlight that you can click, and you'll be given a choice of two different ways to highlight things on the screen. One is with the laser pointer, like you can see right now. And the other one is an arrow cursor, where you can point to things on the screen in an arrow-shaped cursor, as I'm doing now. So once you share your screen, there'll be a second toolbar that will appear with a Spotlight button on it that you can use to simulate a laser pointer.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay. So let's talk about starting a meeting. You've got a meeting scheduled. You want to start the meeting. You can go to your Zoom interface. You can click the home button. You can see the meetings that are scheduled for that day and just click the start button off to the side. A second way to do it is to, in the Zoom interface, click the meetings button at the top. All your meetings will appear on the side. Select the meeting you want to start and click the start button. It's really that simple. Once you do that, the Zoom interface opens up to the interface we're all used to seeing when we join. You as the host are coming in. You're going to offer the choice to join with computer audio, which is how I typically set my meetings up. You click that button, you're in the Zoom interface, and you're ready to go. In this case, I've got like the Millennium Falcon background, blocking out the unmade bed behind me. And as the host of the meeting, you will see on the screen, either near the bottom of the screen or perhaps up near the top, when people enter the waiting room. So because I have the waiting room turned on, nobody can get into the meeting until I let them in. That's a good way to make sure your meetings are secure. So if I want to see who's in the waiting room, I can just click this little See Waiting Room button, and the participants list will open. And I'll see people who are in the waiting room above, and I'll see people who are in the meeting, typically me at that point, below. At this point, I can decide to remove somebody from the waiting room if I don't know who it is. I can admit that person whenever I'm ready, and I can send a message to that person using the chat interface. So any of you who've taken my classes in the past know I use the waiting room. People show up in the waiting room. I will typically send a couple of messages to people in the waiting room, alerting them that I'm here. We're going to get started in a couple of minutes. That's how you do it, right from this participants list. If there were multiple people in the waiting room, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 15 people, you could admit them all with one click of a button. There's an admit all button that will appear. You just click that button, they all come in, you're ready to start your meeting. Okay? That's it for starting a meeting. Just find the meeting in the Zoom interface, click the start button, and you're off and running. A couple things to keep in mind when you are running a meeting. There's this row of buttons that will appear at the bottom of the Zoom interface. As the host, you'll have some things in here that the participants will not, but here's where you can find the chat button down at the bottom of the interface, which will open up the chat window, which we've seen earlier. There's also a more button over here to the right of the chat window interface. Clicking on that allows you to control who can chat with who in the course of a meeting. So you could shut off chat entirely if you wanted to, or just allow the host to do chatting, or allow participants only to talk to the host instead of everybody publicly. So again, you're in control. Also at the bottom is the share screen button. This, I think, is pretty important when it comes to teaching a Zoom class. There's a little arrow button over here just to the right of the share screen button. If you click on that, you can decide who can share, right? Whether participants in the meeting can even share stuff, whether only one participant can share things at a time, or whether multiple people can do it. And there's also some advanced sharing options that you'll have access to from here. Well, let me talk a little bit about your options for screen sharing, because this is fairly important for most of us, I think. Clicking the green share screen button will bring up a window on top of your Zoom window. And from here, you can share a number of different things in a number of different ways. You can, for example, share your entire desktop of your computer if you were so inclined. There's a whiteboard feature that's built into Zoom that allows you to put basically a big white space on the screen that both you and the participants, if you choose, can share like a whiteboard in a classroom. You'll use your finger basically to either draw on a trackpad or drag a mouse around or touch a screen to drag images, drawings. You can type text into it. It's like having a whiteboard in your classroom. You can also share from your iPhone or iPad, in my case, wirelessly through Zoom or with a cable. I teach a lot of classes about how to use Apple products. So I frequently share the display of my iPhone or my iPad with my students. And I'm able to do that using one of these two buttons right here. You can also share individual documents or presentations, say, that you have open on your computer at the time you click the sharing button. In this example, this screenshot is showing a Keynote file, which is a presentation package like PowerPoint, and it's showing a Pages file. It's a word processing program like Microsoft Word. So if I wanted to share an open document that I had on my screen, I can just click the icon for the document I want to share, click the share button, and people on the other end see that document live. So I could, the best thing to do actually, if you're going to be doing any document sharing using Zoom, is to just open up those documents before you even start the meeting. Just have them open on your desktop somewhere. And then when it comes time to share that document, you're going to click the share screen button. A window will appear. You click the document you want to share, you click the share button, and that's what the students on the other end will see. And you can switch between the documents very easily if you want to. But the power user tip here is open up all the documents you plan to share before you even start the meeting. And then when it comes time to share them, just click them in this interface and they'll be shared with other people. You can do this with web pages. You can do it with documents. You can do it with presentations. You can do it with videos that are showing up in web pages. Whatever you want to do, you're just basically taking a window or a document on your screen and sharing it out through Zoom with other people. This is an example of the options you get when you share something. In this case, in this screenshot, there's a word processing document on the screen that I am sharing. As the host, you will see this big green bar here that indicates you are screen sharing this document, okay? You can stop sharing from here to go back to the video camera view. And once this document is being shared, here's this annotate button up here that I was talking about earlier. When you click that annotate button, you'll have the ability to turn on the laser pointer, draw on the document, erase things on the screen. There's all kinds of features available through the annotate button. And there are features available through the more button over here on the right, where you can decide to disable the ability for attendees to annotate a document. And you also have the ability to show names of annotators as they make changes to the screen. So if you're teaching a class that involves sharing a document and having people mark up the document in the middle of the class with each other, this annotation feature and the ability to let students do this live through their Zoom window is a pretty helpful feature. That's kind of a big, 30,000-foot view of screen sharing. There are other options as well. If you're interested in something like that, we'd cover that in greater depth in the class that I teach on using Zoom for teaching. Eileen, you have a question?
Yes, please. If we're sharing a website, web page, maybe even a YouTube video, how do we prevent the sound from the video from being shared also? Did that make sense?
Yeah, it does. You'll notice here in this more area, there's a choice here for sharing computer sound. So let me back up a screen or two here. In the main screen sharing area, let's pretend that I have this item over here is a web page with a video in the middle of it, okay? And I wanted to share the video, but I didn't want to share the audio. I think I would leave this box down here unchecked. Share computer sound. So if I wanted to share the audio from the computer video that's playing, I would check this box. And if you're going to do a video clip and share that out, you might want to check this box here to optimize the screen share for the video clip. It'll make the video run a little bit smoother.
Oh.
Okay. But if you just have some video you want to share, but you don't want the audio from the video to go out to the students, make sure this box in the corner about sharing computer sound is unchecked. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So let me go back ahead here. That's it for pretty much for sharing. Any other general questions about that? And again, we get into much greater depth in the class. Your meeting is done. It's time to end the meeting. You'll have an end button down here in the corner as the host. You click this button and you can end the meeting for everybody with one more click right here. This meeting here that you're participating in has several co-hosts in it. I don't know if any of you are doing any team teaching or not, but you could run into a circumstance where you want to turn the meeting over to somebody else. If you've designated a co-host, you could leave the meeting and then the hosting duties could fall on a co-host, if any of you are doing that. That's really about it, right? Get an account, create some meetings, start some meetings, run some meetings, end some meetings. Simple. How much simpler could it be, right? I can see some people smiling, but I see some people doing this. So let me just wrap up with a couple of tips. And I don't know, I think maybe Jim may cover some of these as well, but give it a try. You can go to zoom.us/test to see how, just kind of fill around, see how Zoom works. Another good example, I think somebody mentioned this earlier, is try to find somebody who you can test with, right? You can test with another device of your own, just invite yourself to your own meeting. But a lot of times it's easier to just, find somebody that you can test it out with. Send them create a meeting, send them an invitation, let them join, and then try out these various features. Keep it simple, stupid, if you can, especially at the start. I know that I kind of ramped it up a little bit as I got into it, but there's lots of things you can do with Zoom, but for your own sanity, so you don't get scared off too fast, just keep it simple. Start slow and then ramp it up if you need to. DND stands for Do Not Disturb. If you're using a computer, for example, shut off the notifications that are coming in. Same thing with if you're doing things from iPads and iPhones or tablets or smartphones. Try to minimize the interruptions if you can, which means try to find a quiet place. Trying to do a Zoom conference in a room that doesn't have a door can sometimes be very distracting for everybody involved. Consider wearing headphones if you can. I do it from time to time, but if you need to stay focused and you want to keep the outside noise out, think about using headphones if you're conducting a class. Lighting is important, not unimportant, is important. So in my room, I've got lots of blinds open. I've got lots of light coming in so that you can be seen. Sometimes just natural light is really all you need. Just make sure you've got some light on yourself at some point. Also, proof your slides for typos in advance if you can. Also, wired is better if you can do wired. And what I mean by that is if you've got a traditional desktop computer that has an Ethernet port on the back, particularly if you're going to be doing videos and things like that, it's always better to be on a wire. Your internet speed is going to be faster from your device out to the internet. So if you can plug in your laptop or your desktop computer with an Ethernet cable into the modem or router in your house, your internet speed is going to be much faster than if you go over Wi-Fi. Most of the time, Wi-Fi will probably be just fine, but if you can do wired, that's a good idea. And don't be afraid to drop the hammer. If you've got people in a class that are being disruptive, or if there's a lot of background noise and people can't hear, just shut everybody's microphones off temporarily and let people unmute themselves if they need to. And if somebody's really being disruptive, just kick them out if you really have a problem. I don't think we're going to run into that too much. This is actually not a K through 4 scenario that we're dealing with here. Karen, I see you have your hand in the air. How can you play music in the background? I think what you would probably want to do with that, if I were trying to do this, and I haven't tried this, but you could maybe start up a program like iTunes on your computer and play the music and share that music through the share feature. You're basically sharing iTunes and including the computer audio for that. Jim might have another suggestion on this. I don't know. Maybe he'll cover that when we get to it. I haven't had to run into that too often in my class. The audio that I play through is usually part of a video that I'm showing rather than just music playing constantly in the background. But I think there is a way to do that. You basically can just turn on music and share it. And then when you're ready to start your presentation or your class, just stop the music and that'll shut that off.
Okay.
Eileen, do you have a
Thank you.
question? Okay. Eileen, do you have a question?
It's actually just a comment. I have the same issue because Karen and I teach the same kind of class. I discovered that if I start I'm on a PC, so Amazon Music, and keep it going at a fairly low volume, then when I get into my Zoom meeting, my students are able to hear it. Occasionally I have audio issues, and it's one of those ignorance is bliss. I didn't have to share, I didn't have to consciously share in the share screen function.
Right.
And when I was looking for a solution to this, it said to go to share, advanced, and then something. As I say, ignorance is bliss. So I just started that music and it seemed to work.
Yeah.
I've had other issues, but they're not related to Zoom.
Okay. I think what might have been happening here was you started the music on your computer and the computer has speakers that are shooting the sound out into the room, right? And then when you start the call and you open up your mic, the mic is picking up the music that's coming out of the computer speakers and pushing it back out through Zoom. That might be what actually happened there. And that might be just fine.
So may I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Can you, okay. So would it make, my music is actually, it's through the Amazon music choice. Does it make sense, since I'm using or going to be using when I get started on this, going to be using my laptop for the Zoom call, just go ahead and have the music playing on my smartphone and sort of play with that versus making a connection? Does that make sense?
You could try that. Again, the sound is going to come out of the smartphone speaker and it's going to be picked up by the microphone on your laptop.
Mhm.
So the microphone on your laptop is going to pick up you speaking at the same time as the smartphone is playing music. It's basically picking up all the audio in the room
Yeah.
and sending it
Okay.
out to recipients. So for example, I just opened up the music app on my Mac. And if I were to, if I could find it, if I were to like play some music on it, you might hear it in the background. And it would just be coming through the microphone in my computer. So it's a similar thing. You could play the music on your smartphone, have it come out the speaker, and the microphone on your computer will just pick up that sound, just like it's picking up your voice, and pipe it out to your students. That might work just fine.
Mike, a comment at this point. If
Yeah.
you bring it in through your iPhone and play it there, you're going to have a lower quality audio sound than if you did it the reverse way. You want to have the better speaker transmitting the sound so that you get the best quality coming into your microphone. So when you go from your iPhone or Android phone, you're not going to have a really high quality signal. It's not going to be very clear. Sorry.
So if I may, although I'm pulling the music from my iPhone, I have a Bose speaker. So the quality is definitely, so it would be actually picking it up from the Bose speaker. So that might help.
Terrific.
And just one other quick question, and I'm going to actually be sort of testing Zoom Tai Chi this afternoon with a friend, so will wish me luck. But a concern that I have, and I don't think Eileen has had this issue, but I've heard from many that if you're doing a movement class, it's important to have a separate wireless speaker, because in Tai Chi, often my back is going to be to the student, so I'm not even facing directly. But now I think Eileen has had great luck where she's got a great laptop microphone. But so I guess my question is, would you say that very often with a laptop Mac, one is going to probably need to look for a wireless microphone to have clipped on?
That'd be my guess. What do you think, Jim? Oh, Jim's going to his
I don't use a wireless microphone. My students are able to hear me fine. I did try playing music on my Android phone early on, and my students couldn't hear it. So that didn't work very well for me. Playing the Amazon on my computer was better. Not great, but it was better. I've read about wireless mics also, but I guess I have a loud voice. So they had no trouble hearing me, even with my back turned to them.
One thing about wireless microphones that is interesting is you need to find one that's comfortable. And that, I think, Eileen, I'd recommended one to you a little while ago, a certain brand. And the difficulty is that the good ones are not cheap. It gives you freedom from your cord, and gives you sound quality sort of like what we have right here now. I have used it many times when I've been in the shop so that I could stay unwired and move around. So it's something to experiment with.
Has anybody tried using AirPods or anything like that as a wireless mic?
It would work.
Yeah, I don't have them in my ears right now, but that's another possibility. That might work. Okay, so let me just mention these upcoming classes. We're going to take that Teaching with Zoom class and split it into 2 parts. Thursday, August 27th, 10 to 11:30. And the second part we're going to do on Friday the 28th, also from 10 to 11:30. So if you're interested in jumping on that bandwagon, I think you can just go to the website to sign up, or I don't know, maybe send a note to Denise. I don't know how it all works. I don't know how those nuts and bolts go, but we are going to do this class later this week, and then again in September, I think, if memory serves. Okay, so you will enroll there. How about that? Nice. Any other questions before I turn it over to Jim?
Yeah, this is Joel. I was wondering, how do you manage multiple Zoom accounts, right? We have one for Mount Diablo, and then one personal one. Is it important to always do personal and Mount Diablo, keep them separate, or does it matter? What's the process?
Well, I keep mine separate. I have several Zoom accounts, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately. But in that Zoom window, let me see if I can go back to that slide real quick. In this window, when you open up Zoom and you click the account button, you can see which account you're using. And there's a button down here for switch account. So if you click this switch account button, you'll have the opportunity to log in with a second Zoom account and password. And that's typically how I'm juggling it. You can also check a box that says, log into this current account automatically next time I launch Zoom. That's another option for you. But I do know that, if I do a personal Zoom call, I'm keeping that on my personal account. I'm only using the Mount Diablo account for events that I'm doing for Mount Diablo. And you can create as many free accounts as you want. The difference is going to be that when you sign up for the Mount Diablo account on the Zoom webpage, you're going to get some benefits that the school district has that you're not going to get from a personal account. So for example, if anybody can sign up for a Zoom account, when you do that, you can do unlimited audio and video calls with one other person. But as soon as you get more than 2 people on a call, you have a 40-minute time limit. Now that 40-minute time limit doesn't apply to any meetings you have using your Mount Diablo account. So that's one difference on the top. But you can juggle these accounts, from here by using this switch account feature. It'll just log you out of the current account and offer you the ability to log in with a different one. Okay, I think that I am done. Congratulations, you survived my dog and pony show.
Thank you, Mike. We appreciate all your help.